Hi, welcome everyone. This is November 17th, 2022. This is the regular meeting of the Board of ALCOSAN. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Administrator, do we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Harry Reedshaw,
Here.
Dr. Shanna Gilliam, present. Councilman Paul Klein.
Here.
Representative Emily Kincaid.
Here.
Councilwoman Teresa Cal Smith,
Here.
Darren Kelly,
Here.
Sylvia Wilson.
Here. Thank you. Any chance we have visitors signed up to speak? No, we do not. All right, thank you. Not today. And just for the public's knowledge, we had an executive session just prior to this board meeting. No votes were taken during the executive session. We will move on now to information items. Item A is a report on the 2022 operating costs and revenues compared to the budget, and you will see this on Exhibit A. Ms. Fantoni.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This report is as of October 31st, 2022. As of that point in time, the percentage of the year expired was 83%. So we only had 2 months left to go, believe it or not. And as of that point, we had expended 76.6% of our expenditures and collected 91.5% of our revenue. And again, a lot of that is attributed to some interest income that we had not previously budgeted for. If there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to entertain them.
Seeing none, we'll move on to item B, Series 2022 bond issuance. Again, Ms. Fantoni.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Last week, we issued our Series 2022 bonds. They are capital bonds or new money that we needed in order to continue our capital projects through 2022 and 2023. And hopefully, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we'll get us into the beginning of 2024. With us today, I have our financial advisor, Charlie Goodwin. He's a director and the head of the public finance arena over at BNY Mellon Capital Markets. And he is going to do a brief presentation for the board to summarize what we just did for you last week. Charlie?
Thank you, Chair. There we go. Thank you, everyone. As Karen said, I'm Charlie Goodwin. I'm head of public finance for BNY Mellon Capital Markets. I've been working with ALCOSAN going back to 1997, and we've been your financial advisor since 2005. So pleased to be here today. What I thought we'd talk about quickly about 4 things. One, overall debt of the authority. Talk about how the rates were and the general market conditions when we sold the bonds to investors on October 25th. How that sale went, and then sort of the next steps, what we're going to do for the next bond issue, which unfortunately is going to be in a couple, probably less than a year or so. Okay, that's just me. So when we put together the bond issue, we really had 5 goals that we wanted to address. First of all, as Karen said, we wanted to get enough money to keep everybody busy out in the yard. And also some of the other engineering work that's going on with resolving of the clean water plan. We also want to look at the debt repayments and sort of match them to the useful economic lives of the projects. Then we also want to be considerate of ratepayers and what your near-term budgetary impact is going to be from the new debt. And also, we're very mindful of the fact that the deal we did just a couple of weeks ago is one of a series of bond issues that are going to be needed to come up with all the capital necessary to fund the clean water plan. And then finally, probably one of the most important things, we want to get you the lowest interest rates, the lowest cost of debt possible. And I think for the most part, we were pretty successful. So we did 267 million of bonds. These will allow you to finance 280 million of capital expenditures because we're going to get some interest earnings between now and when you spend the money. They're fixed rate bonds, semi-annual interest payments to investors, annual repayment of principal. First interest will be due next year in June, first principal not until 2025. Gives you a chance really to sort of gear up for the project and build some more financial capacity to repay. 30 years is the final maturity out in June of 2053. Non-callable for 10 years. And it really is in line with many of the other bond issues that the authority has done that have worked very well since I've been involved since 1997. One thing I really want to play up is that for this bond issue, Standard & Poor's raised the credit rating of ALCOSAN from A+ to AA-. It's only one notch, but it's a big deal. When we combine that rating with your Moody's rating, that's also a AA, AA3 by Moody's, you get to a magical double-double. And that's a big deal that I'll talk about later because it really does unlock additional investors who before couldn't buy the bond under their investment criteria, but now can buy ALCOSAN bonds going forward. So as I said, this is now the newest bond in your overall portfolio. We still have some 2013 bonds left. We've got the 15, 16, 18s, and then the two series of bonds that were done in 2020. This deal was one of your biggest bond issues that you've done, biggest one I've been involved with at ALCOSAN. So really pleased with how it went. Interest rates are higher here than they've been in the past. We got really lucky 2 years ago. We were able to get an interest rate down in the average, when we average those together, about 2.5%. Rates have gone up now. I think everyone's aware of what the Federal Reserve's been doing in terms of increasing their interest rates. And so the overall cost of these bonds in terms of interest rate is about 5%. Yeah. So when we take all the interest and principal payments on all those bonds, we get this nice, pretty colorful chart. At the bottom, the orange bars are the interest and principal payments on the 13s, and then the grays are the 15s, the 16s, and yellow, light blues are the 18s, the greens and the dark blues are the 2020s, and these orange bars up top are the new 2022 bonds. What we're really trying to accomplish here is to spread out these payments over a long period of time and really try to keep your budgetary impact just about $76 million. And we want to make sure that we've got room out here to issue new bonds in the future without really jacking up your budgetary impact above about what it is right now. So for the most part, as it relates to the 2022s, we were able to keep that strategy in place. We do have one thing sticking out like a sore thumb, which is the final payment in 2053. And I'll talk more at the end why we did that and why it helped the authority. There was a link.
Too far.
Yeah. So we offered the bonds to investors on October 25th. As part of that process, we worked with the underwriting syndicate. That's all the banks that help us structure the bonds and sell them to investors. We sat down and tried to figure out what interest rate we needed to get investors' attention in the bonds. Figured out where we think investors would be most interested or less interested. And then figured out where the market was in terms of interest rate and inflation expectations, what the perceived credit worthiness of the authority is, other bonds that were being sold in the market right around the time we were selling bonds, and some of the economic data releases like unemployment numbers that would be going up. We really wanted to get the bond deal in place and done before November 4th, which is when the Federal Reserve met again to raise interest rates. So we're pleased that we were able to get to market before rates went up even more the following week. So once we had some ideas what the rates would be, we went out and asked investors. Investors gave us an awful lot of feedback. They like these bonds in this interest rate. They only want to be out 10 or 15 years for a final maturity. They wanted at least 10 or 15 million of bonds in any one particular maturity. And we took all that feedback and determined the final interest rates on the bonds. And really, everybody remembers Econ 101. It's a supply and demand graph here, and that's how we come up with the interest rate on the bonds. The underwriting syndicate we used is a really strong group of 8 firms. And I'm so glad, given the volatility in the market, that we had such a good team to work with. PNC was the lead. JP Morgan and Siebert Williams Shank were our 2 co-seniors. They really helped us, along with PNC, to work with the rating agencies, put together all the bond documents, give us feedback as to what they saw in the market. And then we had other firms as co-managers who really helped sell bonds to particular types of investors: RBC, Janney Montgomery Scott, Raymond James, Huntington, and Bancroft Capital. I thought all the firms did a very good job supporting the authority. As I said, it was a tough time in the market, and this graph is intended to show that. The blue line is the interest rates on the 10-year maturity of U.S. Treasuries. As you can see, when we did the last bond issue in 2020, rates were down about 1% for Treasuries. They're now up on the 10-year just above 4%. The red line is where tax-exempt bonds are, like the type that ALCOSAN can issue. And they've moved in parallel with the Treasury rates over the last few months of the year. And certainly we're seeing a big spike ever since the summer, when inflation was really starting to become very apparent. And so the Fed has really made some efforts to increase rates starting then. That did make for a pretty choppy time in the market. So we were very concerned whether we would be able to find enough interest from investors to buy the bonds. The great news, as we see in the blue chart over here, is that we had about 290 million of bonds to sell. We were able to get over $1 billion worth of orders. ALCOSAN's bonds are well valued and appreciated in the market. So it was very, very pleasing to all of us involved to get that much interest in the deal. And that really gave us a couple of things. One, gave us a chance to lower the interest rate on certain of the bonds, and 2, adjust the structure of the bond to reflect that investor demand. And that's what we're trying to show here in the red chart. Down here in 2052 and 2053, we had a lot of bonds to sell. We had a lot of bonds to sell in 2052, but we didn't generally get that much interest, only about 82 million of interest for about 90 million of bonds to sell. But we got a ton of interest on that 2053 maturity, $172 million worth of demand from investors. But at the time, initially, we only had about 19 million of bonds available. What we're able to do is move some of the bonds in those earlier years, the 2052s, out to 2053 to reflect this demand. And we were able to save the authority about 1/4 to 0.5% in interest just by doing that restructuring. It does create that big jump in your debt profile. And that last year, where I mentioned you had that thing sticking out like a sore thumb, that's what caused it. But we think the authority saved a lot of money from doing that. And we can structure around that when we do the next couple of bond issues. The other important thing I want to point out, and I apologize, a little bit blocked here, but when I mentioned we're now a double-double, that generated interest from these investors, Allstate, PIMCO, and UBS Global Asset Management. They came in with 125 million worth of orders for the bonds. They've not bought your bonds before. So that magical one-notch upgrade unlocked 125 million of additional interest in your bonds.
Great.
Let's come on back. Please. A little quicker. Last thing I want to touch on are the costs of issuing the bonds. As your financial advisor, one of our major jobs is to make sure that you are paying market rates for all the services that are part of the deal. The biggest fees we pay are to the underwriters, the firms that structure and sell the bonds and take the risk associated with that. As is typical in the municipal bond market, those fees are a percentage of the par amount outstanding or issued. So the bigger the deal, the bigger your fees are going to be overall. So for our 2022 bond issue, about $1 million was paid to the underwriters to sell the bonds. That was divvied up in various percentages among the 8 different firms. And again, it's bigger than what we've seen in the past, but again, it is a much bigger deal and also one of our more difficult bond environments to sell into. So therefore, we felt it was appropriate to have a slightly higher percentage as a fee to the underwriters. And then in terms of the other firms in the deal, we have them listed over here. The total fees is a little bit higher than say your 2020 bonds, but on a percentage basis, was lower than the last deal, because we were able to keep a lot of the costs down compared to the overall size of the bond issue. So with that, that's what I wanted to highlight, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
The spike, the last payment in the last year, why it's a benefit to have the spike payment?
Sure. The reason why is the interest rate on those bonds is about 25 basis points to 50 basis points lower than the rates on the previous bond. So even though there's a lot of bonds out here that you'll be paying, these bars here would have been a lot higher if we didn't have that. So overall, you're saving a significant amount of money by moving those principal payments out to that last year. And I think we ran the numbers, and I get the exact number, but I want to say on a dollar basis, it's like $2 million.
Anyone else have questions, comments? All right, thanks. Thanks, Charlie. All right, we're going to move on to C, item C, WWTP expansion cost report. This is exhibit B. And Kennedy, please.
Thank you. Well, the reason we need the bonds. Was a good segue. So I last gave this update 2 months ago, and since then we added the CSO bypass and disinfection award. So you'll see that 90 million, almost 91 million added to the first column, the original contract award. So at this point, we have almost $336 million in contracts awarded for the plant expansion. And the value through the middle of November is at about $144 million. We are now firing on all cylinders with respect to the North End, the East Headworks, and the CSO bypass, as well as our environmental compliance facility. So I would expect these numbers to stay pretty consistently moving up as we move into 2023. But anybody had any questions on any particular project, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, hearing none, thank you. We'll move on to our Purple Shirt campaign. Lisa George.
Speaking of money, the money trend continues only the time it's happening, and so multiplying and spending and different things like that. So my name's Lisa George. Some of you, usually pretty much everyone does to meet you. There are a few new ones in the room. I appreciate. Nice to meet you all. I'm Lisa George. I'm the internal events coordinator here at ALCOSAN. The position was created by Arletta several years back now. We do a lot of giving back, a lot of employee engagement, a lot of things throughout the year. And because it's very important to us, very important to Arletta. And so it became a full-time role to have someone that would coordinate and help think of ideas and make Arletta's ideas for different things throughout the year try to come to life. So it's really great to be here and nice to kind of sort of we look forward to talking to you new members in the future. This is hard to believe. This is our 8th annual Shirt Off Your Back fundraiser. It is it's the unofficial, you know, a lot of things get a nickname. The unofficial name for it is the purple shirt. A lot of people know it as purple shirt. Since there are some new board members, I'll give you a little bit about the background about how this came about, the purple shirt. It wasn't a situation that was positive or great by any means, but we tried to turn it into that. In August of 2014, we had an ALCOSAN employee, Tina, shortly after leaving work, she was tragically gunned down in her front yard. I actually started working here at ALCOSAN a few days after that, so came into that type of environment here and, you know, try to understand it as much as possible, being so new. A lot of times after someone passes in a tragic way or any loved one that passes, we tell stories about them, we reminisce, you know, funny, good, bad, the ugly, everything about that person, and to try to help us mourn and go forward, you know, if possible, as much as well as we can. A fellow employee, who that is Jay there on the right in the photo, he shared a story with us about Tina. You know, he had commented one day at work about how much he loved her shirt. She had a purple polo shirt on, and Tina was very insistent on Jay taking that shirt. So literally taking the shirt off her back, which is where that nickname, the name of the fundraiser came from. The photo on the bottom left is actually our first gathering. You know, we all decided to wear purple that day. We blew some bubbles. It was very, very raw, still very, very new, but we wanted to right away acknowledge it and help everyone start to heal and try to find some way of making some type of good come out of it. The actual purple shirt is right here out in the lobby. Took a photo of it in their left, so that's the actual shirt. Jay did donate that very willingly. You know, we donate that. So that shirt, for those of you who are interested, it's out here in the lobby here. What we tried to do then from that is, you know, tough is to, like I said, find a way to celebrate, turn that tragedy into something positive. And a lot of times, you know, the best way we can go forward is to try to carry on the traits about someone that we loved and lost and to kind of keep them alive through our actions and stuff, you know, keep a part of them alive with us. So that's the purple shirt story. In the 7 years that we've been doing purple shirt, very happy to, even through the pandemic few years, we've raised over $90,000 for local charities in our own backyard. So very, very proud about that. Each year we choose a local nonprofit. This year, the nonprofit is going to be Pittsburgh Mercy's Operation Safety Net. We are going to be focusing on homeless this year, the homeless problem, huge problem in our own community. It's very relevant to what we're doing and such. So we thought that would be a very a perfect match for this year. Pittsburgh, I really wasn't that familiar with them, did some research and just sharing a few points with you. They've been around for over 30 years helping the homeless in the region. They're award-winning, they do medical, social services, just a lot of outreach in the area. I'll get into it a little bit more on the next slide with that. When I did some research, did not realize homelessness, this is just a report from this August, is at a 12-year high in Allegheny County. A lot of that, just like a lot of things in the world, is due to the pandemic and the economic fallout from it, and also just not only in Pittsburgh, but across the country, there are fewer affordable housing options due to the past few years. Operation Safety Net, they do street outreach, which Pittsburgh is kind of unique in a way with homelessness, that a lot of cities, Seattle, DC, it's more concentrated on those 10 cities and areas where the homeless kind of congregate together. In Pittsburgh, it seems to be more pockets. It's just as big of a problem, but it's not as concentrated in certain areas. But there are pockets that we're recognizing, we're noticing signs of homeless, you know, people living in certain spots and stuff. So they provide housing services when they can, health, medical, medicine, and also legal services to help get people back on their feet. Okay, for those of you that aren't familiar, Second Avenue Commons will be very shortly. They were scheduled to open mid-October. It's got pushed back a little bit. And it's a new facility that's going to be in downtown Pittsburgh, on Second Avenue, and I'll get into that, but Operation Safety Net has been chosen to run the shelter and also their daytime engagement center that they have. Okay, what it will be, Second Avenue Commons, it's going to be a 95-bed shelter, daytime engagement center. There's going to be a primary care clinic in it. There will be single room occupancy apartments. Couples are also welcome. And a big one, this is actually rare in the homeless community, is they are actually going to allow pets. You know, they'll be vetted and, you know, make sure it's safe, but you know, people love them. I'm sure you've seen on the streets too, people will have their pets with them, and that makes it, they love them just like family, and it's harder to find places to go. So pets will be welcome. For more info, they have a lot of information on their site. Go into a lot more detail. You can go to the Second Avenue. Okay, donating. We're gonna have, this is more for an internal thing, but anyone interested in donating online, they have their own website set up, and we'll say give, and then you go into it deeper and put in ALCOSAN as the company and such. So, or we are going to be, you know, we'll have checks Pittsburgh Emergency Operation Safety Net. I saw it. There it is. Okay. We also internally, and usually when it's a board meeting where there's the public is also here, we'll be on the lobby with our infamous purple shirts. We have purple shirt cutouts. This is a way of celebrating and recognizing any loved ones in your life that you have lost. These end up displayed in our Great Hall in the O&M building, for those of you that are familiar with that. And they string along the whole wall. It's a way of raising money and also remembering. People get pretty creative. Some years they'll put a certain number of shirts if their loved one has at a certain age. They'll have photos of their loved one on the shirt. It's become quite a thing here at ALCOSAN to have these purple shirts displayed. We also have white wristbands this year. Oh, it could be, and I have one on. But we have one shirt, wristbands, and they have celebration of life and ALCOSAN on them. These pre-pandemic years, it was great. These did get more popular. They outside of ALCOSAN as well. I know Arletta would share that she'd see them on some people at different offsite events that she was at. So we're hoping to get back to that as well. And then this, if tentatively, we'll say January 2023, the campaign, we have Purple Day and a celebration of life walk. The exact date hasn't been pinpointed yet, but we walk. Now we'll be able to walk again, hopefully rain or shine. We have a photo of us walking outside a few years back. We have that actually the top right photo. I think Michelle, that may be your code there. Picture. I think that's good though, right? I make sure you go. Anyway, we walked through the tunnels. We've done that a few years, and that's Arletta. She was, you know, since we didn't have a SWAT, it was Arletta was our official walk finish person. I think she high-five and low-five every single person coming through. So we had a lot of extra fun that year. And then this is, and again, hope to get it back to this. The past few years, we haven't been able to gather like this, but we have Purple Day. You know, people get creative, decorate, bring in food. We've eaten purple hallucity, purple buffalo chicken dip, purple. Yeah, and then we all end up eating our next day. Yeah, it's quite interesting. But anyway, this was from our first year that we did it. So it just shows you how much support we had and what how this all came to light. So thank you everyone for listening. If you have any questions or want to donate or anything, just lisa.george@alcosan.org, and I'm sure Arletta will be very happy to.
I'm just gonna give a pitch for the firefighters coat drive for the next beneficiary. What is it, Jared?
Operation Warm.
Operation Warm, they give coats to kids across the city, free coats, hats, gloves, backpacks,
Yeah, we do a lot of.
50,000 in count.
brand new coats made by unions.
Oh, that's awesome. We have smaller fundraisers to here, Jean Days, Black and Gold Days and stuff, so we're always looking for local. But this one, I know I made it a little humorous there, but it honestly is a huge problem, the homelessness, and I'm not trying to all make light of it. And we've been able to raise, it's grown every year. We're hoping to do the same again this year, close to $20,000 each year, the past few years for charity. So especially with the timing of Second Avenue Commons, we would just love to get our foot in the door and be a huge part of helping that problem. So I appreciate you all very much. Thank
Thank you.
Thank you for your work. Thank you for listening.
Good job.
Okay, thanks.
Good drivers.
Want to move on to the report of actions by the executive director. This is the approval of construction change orders that are less than $30,000. This corresponds with Exhibit C. Ms. Williams.
Madam Chair, this is a closeout change order credit for things that weren't done or in some ways misunderstood. In one case, I believe there was a flat gate. It was a flat gate that we thought was going to be constructed or sized one way, but when we got into underground conditions, we needed to bore the hole differently. It's a wrap up.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, we're going to move now to the action items. And the first item is to approve the minutes from the October 27th meeting.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That is approved. Thank you. Item B is to consider authorizing payments of invoices that are in excess of $20,100 that were processed during the period of October 18th to November 7th. Ms. Williams, and this goes along with all the items for Exhibit D. Ms. Williams.
The exhibit is the same as you received it in your preliminary packet. If you review it and have questions about specific invoices, you will be pleased to respond.
All right, hearing none, but I have a motion and a second to approve, please.
Second.
All in favor?
I have to recuse myself.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have,
I recuse myself.
it's all been, everyone who's able to vote, voted aye. We have one recused vote.
And we have to announce the reason as well, because of the son working for Hatch, and we've given a memo to be filed with the meeting minutes for next month.
Thank you so much. All right, item C is a motion to authorize the preparation. I did say that that was approved, right? Okay. Item C to authorize the preparation of specifications and advertising for bids for the following contracts that are listed in Exhibit E. Ms. Williams.
I'm carrying first item, first contract is straightforward. Actually, all three are straightforward in terms of how they're identified. The first is for interceptor cleaning that will begin next year and move into 2024, most specifically focusing on the upper Allegheny and sections of Turtle Creek. The second, repair of all of garage doors. We have numerous garage doors that require preventive maintenance that is outside of the scope of what our maintenance forces provide, as well as providing for repair of those doors when necessary. The third is providing for lights for our primary segment tanks. Those who have been on a plant tour understand these are the mechanisms that drop down, scrape the solids from the bottom of the primary set tanks. I will date myself by saying that when I started here, lights were made out of redwood.
Wow.
Yes. There were gentlemen who would wait for flights to have to be removed because, of course, every so often you're going to get a broken flight. And heaven only knows they have been scraping sludge, but they would take them and get them made into pool cues.
Wow.
Yes, so out to sand history 101. Fiberglass, I don't know what you do with fiberglass after that.
Motion to approve all three contracts.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion has been approved. Item D is a motion to approve the following change orders that exceed $30,000 in value. They correspond with Exhibit F. Ms. Williams.
Madam Chair, this is the change order, this is the project that we talked about and highlighted last month. This is a substantial change order on that project. I have asked the Director of Regional Advance, Mike Litchfield, to give us a brief presentation just to keep it focused. Mike.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just gonna give you an update on change order number 2 here. This is the repair we have out in near Sandcastle.
Charlie wore it out.
You got it work. Okay, this is the general area out here. Glenwood Bridge is still on the left. Sandcastle parking lots, right of it. The area of the repair is right down in the vicinity of the Streets Run culvert. Our original contract was about a $9 to $10 million contract to line these portions of the interceptor. While the contractor was in this vicinity, we got notification of an emergency failure down along Streets Run. And I've got some pictures of it here. This is basically the failure we encountered. Pipe just discharging. This is raw fluid going right into Streets Run. You can see here where the pipe is rotated away from the wall of the culvert. The stream has essentially undermined some of the foundation that was there originally. Okay. This is was a picture when we encountered the stream and the sewage discharge. This is the inside of the culvert. There are cracks in the crown of the culvert as well as cracks along the side. I got some pictures from the outside. We basically, in conjunction with the contractor, deemed this as a pretty unsafe situation for conducting a repair. There we go. So basically, what change order 2 breakdown is, we have an internal pipe repair as part of this change order. It wasn't associated with the emergency repair. It was associated with the lining of the 30-inch line out in the lawn. There's a mobilization excavation part of the change order. There's a stream bypass. The contractor has set up a bypass system in the stream. There was a portion of the culvert that needed to be demoed and removed. We poured new concrete footers on both sides to support a new concrete arch coming from contact. And there was a sizable charge associated with asbestos abatement removal and the pipe disposal. I'll get into that a little bit. Okay. This was not associated with the emergency repair. This was a repair done so that the contractor could line through the section and use cured in place lining. What happens here is that you see these kinds of leaks, these will create a bulge in your liner before it's cured. And what will happen is you'll get a bulge a permanent bulge in there. So this has to be repaired prior to lining. So how does a contractor do that? We have these systems of repair. These are called union lock bands. What happens, these lock in place, but what happens is they need to insert this into the pipe and they blow it up with a packer and it locks in place. So this actual repair had to be done from a barge. Okay, so we had to pay for Marion Hill's time out on the barge. We also had to pay for Independence time to insert the packer and blow up the band. Now this band was about $23,000. So it's quite an expensive piece of equipment, but it does allow you to line through the pipe and conduct the repair. Okay. The next item, mobilization excavation. We had heavy equipment mobilized in September. Contractor mobilized approximately 12 pieces of heavy equipment to conduct the excavation and the pipe repair. Here you can see him bringing in a dozer. He brought in eight excavators, some large, some small, to conduct repairs inside the culvert. You'll see that in a few slides. Approximately 6,000 cubic yards of earth was removed. And what we do when we price these and we negotiate with the contractor, we use prior pricing that we have from prior contracts. So in the end, what the pricing for 6,000 cubic yards, it was pretty consistent and actually a little bit lower than what we normally see in excavation. So. There we go. Okay, what you also see, there's quite a lot involved in conducting the stream bypass. The contractor had to bypass the streets run, okay, down below the repair section, so that he could do repairs for the mud mat, set stone. So there was a lot of things he had to do to, we had to get the stream out. Okay, so he had a 12-inch, a 4 and a 6-inch pump doing some of that bypass pumping. Now, what you see here is a fusing pipe to take the pipe to bypass through the section with which they're doing the repair. There are also a number of ready blocks. They're basically large versatile blocks, the keystone blocks that he used. He used about 27 cubic yards of concrete to conduct this bypass. And then the bypass assumes 45 days of stream bypassing. So what we did, we tracked this using times and material. We arrived at a negotiated price. Boy.
Keep talking to it.
Okay, this is part of the culvert demolition and removal. Okay, we had to bring specialty contractor in to saw cut. You can see lines along this is Swank saw cutting the culvert, and this is independent, pulling the pieces of the culvert aside from the and then demoing them off site. But right here, you can see them attaching two excavators, and they have chains, and they're going to get ready to pull this piece off, just like up here. So quite a lot of effort, a lot of equipment on this job. Again, a lot of equipment. There's pumper trucks and so forth. This is the contractor again, four in the footers. There's about 66 cubic yards of concrete in here, $5,000 worth of rebar, and about 50 tons of stone that he placed underneath the footer to provide support. So, okay, this is one of the big items you'll see in the change order. Asbestos pipe removal and disposal. You have to bring a state-approved asbestos contractor out here to abate this. You have to conduct air monitoring. All these little fragments, they have to be scooped up by licensed asbestos removal personnel, containerized and trucked off-site. So what you're seeing here is quite an extensive operation. Nova Environmental provided pricing of roughly $200,000 to containerize, remove, and as well truck this material offsite to. They went to Westmoreland Sanitary Landfill. Now, also what you'll see as part of this, independent had to support this operation with their excavators, their equipment, and their labor. Again, here, this is basically just a summary of the cost of the various items. We track time and materials on all this, and we computed the cost for either prior pricing or equipment watch and other items that we could use to compare pricing. So what this ends up totaling is roughly $950,000, but we reviewed it and we recommend the change order to the board.
So basically extra costs because of asbestos, equipment, damage that we didn't know was there. I think the visuals help a lot to explain that. Questions, anybody?
I also very much appreciate the cost breakdown. That was gonna be my question of like, obviously this is a very big order, but having the sort of what each individual piece is actually gonna cost is very helpful. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm hearing no questions, or further comments, could I please have a motion and a second to approve?
Motion to approve the change order.
Second,
Second, we have a whole bunch of seconds. All in favor?
aye.
Okay, motion carries. Items E and F were discussed and approved by the Professional Services Committee to be recommended to the full board today. The committee met on November 14th. Item E is a motion to approve the following authorization, it's for ADS under the Agreement for Engineering Consultant Services. Ms. Williams?
Madam Chair, this is as indicated for flow monitoring services. Flow monitoring is a critical component of our overall planning. As you heard me say, if you don't know what's in the pipe, how it's reacting, you cannot plan to appropriately manage it. This will be a support to many of the programs under the overall clean water program umbrella, regionalization, growth, and municipal support in general. So glad to be able to bring this to you. And this will cover what time period, Mike?
3 years.
3 years, correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Lose, you lose.
Okay, if no comments or questions, could I have a motion as second?
So moved.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Myself on this as well. You're okay. We have one person to recuse themselves, but the motion does, it has been approved. Item F is a motion to award the solids thickening and dewatering improvements project to CDM Smith. Ms. Williams, we're authorizing her to negotiate a fee, but Ms. Williams, you can explain this for us, please.
Thank you.
Thoroughly, for people who are watching and not know.
This was it.
And because the Professional Services Committee really didn't appreciate my explanation, I'm going to turn it over to the Director of Engineering and Construction. Kim, please.
Thank you. So this is the next plant expansion project associated with the wet weather plant expansion that we're going to move into design. This project does include the design and purchase of both dewatering and thickening centrifuges, as well as new pipe pumping that is appropriately designed for the new tunnel routing within the system, that the conditions have changed quite a bit out there. We're really looking forward to getting this one going. We haven't had to, we've been worried about, finishing designs and moving into construction. We haven't started a new design in a couple years. So this is, we're really happy to be here today to recommend CDM Smith. It was a strong team. We had a good procurement, but we think we have a good team to bring this next design project.
Thank you. Without visuals.
Next time pictures.
Not picture.
But I have a motion in second.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, this item is approved. I don't see any new business, but I would like at this time, at our last meeting, we had Miss Teresa Kale Smith here in person. And we have Mr. Darren Kelly, our two new board members, but Mr. Kelly is here today. So we welcome to see his face here and present.
Instead of this, we saw my.
And I also want to thank, want everyone to enjoy good Thanksgiving holiday, do whatever you can. We're not having any hunting going on after, are we? After Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we are? Well, then I want to make sure that all our hunters are careful, please.
We will be.
All right, our next board meeting will be December 8th. That's kind of early. December 8th.